the accused person. And then, of course, we're having the committee chair doubling down on it. The matter is capturing the attention of the public, and so we're bringing it up for discussion. Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, former UN governance advisor, joins us. He's no stranger to our show. And he joins us alongside another friend of joy, Suleiman Abraima, Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you so much for your time with us. Now, just to get started, let us hear what Martin Kpebu, a member of the committee set up to receive information for Operation Recover or Loot, Martin Kpebu, had to say.
So you know that from our mandate we are preparatory. So being preparatory, our mandate doesn't involve actual recovery of the loot. That will be in the second stage.
Okay.
But at least there are examples of people who say they are returning. Do you remember the example of the NIB boss who says, okay, you know, yesterday we went, all right, team, we went to the Agric Extension land around
the NBA, the National Northern Development Authority.
This one, NIB, National Investigative Bureau,
Okay.
Former BNI,
Yes.
the boss. Yeah, he said, you know, because of the advocacy Okujeto was doing on it, and he just called Okujeto and said, listen, at least that's what Honorable Okujeto said. He said, I'm returning my land. I'm no longer interested. Leave me out of this. Yesterday we went to that place. Then,
so he's returned the land that...
Yes, he says he's no longer interested. NIB boss, Atubra, I know Atubra a bit personally. Yeah, that's what Honorable Okujeto said. That Atubra says he's no longer interested in the land. Yesterday we visited that land. Yesterday we went to that place. We went to Labadi where the Blade brothers have taken the land from the Labadi beach.
Private legal practitioner Martin Kpebu, who is a member of the Oral Information Reception Team, speaking on TV3 on their Key Points program. Now, Prof. Bafo Agyeman-Duah and Suleiman Abraima are our guests. Let me start with you, Prof. Now, I think one thing is clear. The idea of recovering loot really appeals to most Ghanaians. It's something that people want to see happen. The process, however, began even before the president was sworn in. As president-elect, he set up this team, 5-member team, to receive information. Now we are seeing the team put out information, and some of that information is being disputed. Prof, could this have been handled better?
Well, first of all, let me say you're right. Ghanaians in their numbers do support any process to retrieve stolen properties of state and those who may have acquired state assets illegally. So that initiative, welcome. But the problem is that we are not too sure of the legality of this initiative. Sure, if they are gathering information for a possible prosecution by the appropriate legal authorities, then why are they advertising their efforts? I think this kind of publicity around their work in itself could hurt them if, in fact, this case has to go to court. Martin Kpebu is an excellent lawyer. I know him, and we all know him. And he's the first person to rise to defend anyone who may be accused and arraigned illegally. So I'm surprised that they've taken delight in advertising their work. Information gathering, simply you are gathering information that may not be substantiated in court, that may not have evidence to support. But meanwhile, you're exposing it publicly and indirectly or directly, even accusing people for something that they may not have done. So I think they should be a bit cautious about this process, because we were told some time ago by the chairperson of this group, Oral, Mr. Blackwell, that they don't have prosecutorial powers. Of course they don't. And that their job is simply collect and maybe pass the information on to the appropriate authorities, Attorney General or wherever that they may send. And I think that's okay. okay? Because this oral has no legal standing. I'm not a lawyer. I'll allow the lawyers to discuss this. But I'm getting a bit worried that the way they're advertising and dramatizing their work could backfire when it comes to certain legalities. That is where my concern is. But the whole idea of retrieving stolen state taxes, I think it's an excellent one. Secondly, don't forget that this is not the first time something similar is happening in our country. Those of us who are old enough can recall under the AFRC, PNDC, and in fact, even some other military regimes, how people were harassed, abused, and in the end, we simply discovered that they were not guilty. Meanwhile, their reputations, in fact, some of them, their lives were lost. So we have to be careful. This is a democracy. We're supposed to be guided by laws. As I began by saying, I'm not challenging what they're doing. It's good. I would be delighted if all those who have stolen from the state are brought to justice. But the approach is like, I'm a bit concerned about that, and I will advise them. All the gentlemen on that commission, oral, I know personally, I know all of them. They are decent people, they are passionate, they want to help the country, and we support them. But they should be cautious about how they are approaching their work.
One of the things about this committee is that when the names of the members were announced, there was some real support for them. I mean, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, Martin Pebu, Kofi Boakye, retired police officer, Raymond Archer, and indeed Daniel Domelevu. These people are known for being vocal in their, campaigns against wrongdoing. People lauded them for that reason. They expected that these will be people who will speak up about whatever they find. Now they are speaking up, but the things they are saying are being challenged. Did the president fail to foresee this wrinkle, or is it even a wrinkle?
Well, I won't put the blame on the president. I think the intention was good. As I said earlier, we have to find every possible means, legal means. In fact, a good friend, a prominent civil society person, has even suggested in some quarters that we should use unorthodox means to chase people who have stolen. I found that very interesting, because I don't know what unorthodox means is to him. But in the past, we have used unorthodox means to achieve certain ends, and in the end, we all were embarrassed. All of us were embarrassed by the actions of that particular government. So I think whilst we're enthusiastic about correcting the wrongs of the past, we have to remind ourselves that in a democracy, the rule of law is important. And the lawyers know. I'm not a lawyer. And they know that when such cases go to court and the court throws them out, then they will turn against the court. You see, so I think there must be a way to go about this. For me, the people on the committee, as I say, they are decent people. I don't know their background, but I think they are decent people. But the work must be done quietly and make sure evidence collected is checked and cross-checked. So before they come formally, official to say, look, we have discovered all this and we are going to pass on the information to the appropriate bodies. They have solid evidence and nobody can come out to deny. Now, if you go and people say, oh, no, I didn't do it. Oh, you came to talk to me. You did. Then you're already trying the case in the public domain. And that's not the way to do it. You see? So, I don't know. But all I'm saying is that, yes, we must find a way to recoup all stolen assets. But there's no need for Gestapo approaches to these kind of matters.
Right. Let me bring in Suleimana Brahima at this point. Sule, look, do you foresee legal issues here? This is a committee that was set up by a person who was not the president at the time he set it up. But the committee is now putting out information into the public domain about government officials and accusing them of wrongdoing. The Martin Kpebu sound that we played has Martin Kpebu saying that Okujeto Ablakwa says that this person says he will return land that he acquired illegally. That's a very serious claim. Do you foresee that the work of this committee could result in legal challenges?
Well, thank you, Kojo. I think that the questions have always been raised about the legality of the committee or the group. I wouldn't call it a committee. The group that was set up by the then president-elect with a mandate to work towards, recovering the looting of state assets by certainly persons who were in government or persons politically exposed or those who had connections in government. I think that the overall objective is a great idea, and I doubt that there can be any challenge to say that, for example, a looted property or a property that had been stolen from the state has been identified and the facts around it gathered, and then somebody would say that, well, the people who identified the wrongdoing and identified the facts were not properly constituted, and therefore there could be legal challenges to that effect. I don't think that, even though I'm not also a lawyer, I doubt there would be something like that. I believe you and I, if we have any information about a state property that had been appropriated illegally by anyone at all, we can actually give that information to any government official that we think, or any individual that we think may have the capacity to take that issue on. And to that extent, I don't foresee any legal issues with the group that was set up by the then president-elect. I think where I also have a challenge is the way some of the members are going about some of the issues related to the work that they are doing. I want to believe that sometimes it is about an effort to let the public know the value of the group that was set up, and to let the public know that the group is working in the interest of the public. And also, I believe that sometimes it is about the politics of it, letting the public know how bad certain things have been done, how some individuals may have profited unduly from their position, and depriving the state of certain assets and all of that. That sometimes, I believe, is the motivation for putting out some information in the public out there. But specifically on the issue that is being discussed, I am wondering the context within which Martin thought that it was appropriate to say, well, this person has even reached out to ORA to say that he is no longer interested in property that he had been given to him or he had acquired illegally. Because subsequent information suggests that the person himself did not appear before the group to make this claim, but that it was communicated through an emissary or something like that. Now, when something like that is done, it might be difficult. For example, if this guy decides to say, "Look, I haven't said anything. I challenge you to put out the name of the person," or "I challenge you that I haven't appeared before you." And then you say that, "Oh, it was Mr. A or Mr. B who was sent to come and tell us this." The person can simply say, "No, I haven't sent Mr. A or Mr. B." And so, if care is not taken, at the end of the day, out of the effort to let the public know that the group is working, the group has been so valuable to the state, the group is gathering a lot of information, we may end up having a situation where there will be legitimacy issues, not in the legal context, but in the kinds of information that they put out there. I think even if they think that, well, look, we have to let the public know that we are working in their interest. We have to let the public know that it was good that the president put this group together. We have to let the public be excited about the work we are doing so that more and more people can come forward with information to us. It could be done in a much more strategic way, because sometimes it feels like maybe people want to use that to either make a name, put themselves out there in the public. That may not be the intention, but the way certain things are being done, one may, conclude that it's just an opportunity for somebody to grandstand or put themselves out there in the public domain.
Sule, I want to stay with you for this. It's a bit counterintuitive for me, a person who works with information, to ask this question, but I'll ask it anyway. I'll play devil's advocate. First, let me read from the statement that was issued on the 18th of December announcing the establishment of this team. I'll just read the first paragraph. The heading was Preparatory Team Towards President-Elect's Anti-Corruption Drive. The statement was issued by the transition team of the President-elect John Dramani Mahama. This is what it says. As a preparatory measure towards the rollout of His Excellency John Mahama's promise to recover proceeds of corruption and hold persons responsible for such corruption accountable when he assumes office, a team has been set up to receive and gather information from members of the public and other sources on suspected acts of corruption. Then it goes on to list the team members. So the team was set up, according to this, to receive and gather information. But the team is now sharing information that they have received and gathered. Do you think they are overstepping their mandate?
Well, as I said, I think the motivation or the drive could be letting the public know that the team is working, letting the public know that the work of the team is quite valuable. More and more people are coming forward with information around issues of corruption or issues of looting from the state and all of that. Otherwise, the question that somebody would ask would be, if all along the team has been doing whatever they have been doing in silence, nobody is hearing about them, would the public begin to be asking questions about, but the president set up this team, has it been working at all? Has it been of any value? How much is being spent on the team and all of that? So sometimes I believe it is as a result of, the thinking that we have to let the public know that we are working. And we have to let the public know that what we are doing is so significant. So, for example, Martin would then say, even so and so person who had benefited from the allocation of state lands has now come back to say, look, I'm not even interested, take your thing. So I think that it's quite a dicey one. But now that the president has been sworn in, has taken over, I think the opportunity is there to now set up maybe a formal committee. Because, Kojo, I am wondering whether those in this preparatory team, all of them are going to be staying on for a while, whether the team is going to be formalized, whether some of them are going to be getting ministerial appointments, and assuming they get ministerial appointments, what happens? Would the team be dissolved? Would we say that the team has come to the end of the job that they were supposed to do? I don't think that this short period would have enabled any team to gather the kinds of information that is needed to be gathered, given, the mandate that...
Oh dear, I think we may have lost Sule there. We'll reconnect with him and get the rest of his submission. But Prof, since we still have you, let me ask this. This is, I think we've lost Professor Bafo Ajimandia as well. We have him? Okay, Prof, thank you for your patience. Oh dear, no, we've lost them both. Let's see if we can reconnect. But interesting submissions so far. It appears that generally everybody likes the idea of recovering loot. I think we have Sule Mana Brima back on the line. Sule, you were making a point before you got cut off. Sorry.
Yes, I'm not sure where the line dropped. But the point I was making is, would the president now consider formalizing a group or maybe a presidential committee, a commission, to do this work with persons that we are sure would be doing this with a specific timeline, maybe a 3-month period or 6-month period to submit a report, and the president then acting on the report either for prosecution or for any other intervention that may be appropriate. But the current group that we have, my thinking or my sense is that maybe some of them may even be given ministerial appointments, and that may be quite soon, maybe in the next 1 week or 2. Now, when that happens, what happens? They cannot be ministers and still doubling up as members of ORA. Would we then be seeing a dissolution of the committee? And at that point, would we say that the committee has done enough, has gathered enough? I'm sure they've by now would have gathered quite a lot of information. Or are we saying now that state institutions would be activated? The Attorney General, I'm told, being vetted today or tomorrow, if he's approved, and then he's sworn in as Attorney General, would he now take over the work of ORA? Or what is it? I think that maybe at this point it would be useful and helpful if the president could provide some clarity about the next steps in terms of this important work that is being done. Because, and I say it's important because, look, Kojo, the looting has been so massive and so, devastating. You go to a place like Tamale, and you would realize that almost every state land has been taken. Almost every state land. And it's not just Tamale. In almost every regional capital, not to talk about even the national capital here in Accra, almost every regional capital, in fact, in some cases, districts, state lands have been taken by persons affiliated with government or persons in government. And that cannot be, and that shouldn't be something that should be allowed to happen. But having said that, Kojo, it is important for us to also remind ourselves that this whole thing about taking over state lands, persons in government, whether those living, those staying, taking government lands in prime areas didn't start now. It may be useful for us to say, can we have, maybe in the last 20 years, the list of all those who acquired state lands, and under what circumstances and under what cost? It's okay to say, well, the past it has happened, but let's prevent it from going forward. But I believe that it is also important that we also get the evidence even from the past. Persons in this government, did they also benefit from state lands? If it is so, what is then the basis of saying that we are pursuing these people when you are sitting on a state land? I think we must make it a national agenda and say, look, people who took state lands, either legally, illegally, or whatever, we need to know. And going forward, we have to prevent it from happening.
Prof, it occurs to me that John Mahama, in his bid to become president again, reminded everybody and told everybody that he would do a better job. Now, would it not have been more prudent for him to wait until he was president and then use the existing structures and institutions to recover this loot? Do we not have sufficient laws? Do we not have sufficient institutions for the recovery of loot? And can the president not go ahead and do so with his legitimate power through his appointees?
Well, I've heard criticisms on the lines that you just raised the question, and not necessarily so. Corruption has been one of the key issues that has brought him to power. And interestingly, corruption was also a major issue that drove Mahama out of power in 2016. You see, so it's an endemic problem, and this state acquisition, selling of and stealing or whatever state assets, has been going on for years. I think the idea of my good friend Brahma saying that we should go way back, then we have to go way back to independence, because a lot of politicians and bureaucrats, top bureaucrats, have sapped this nation of its assets. We know that. Okay? And I think one of the best proposals has been given by our good friend, Mr. Blakwa, when he suggests that, in fact, a law should be made immediately stopping the sale of or transferring of assets to not only political appointees, but the top bureaucrats in the civil service. It's not just the politicians, you see. Yeah. So I think it's a major issue that we should react. And that is why perhaps the approach that we're discussing currently must be re-examined, because it shouldn't be an ad hoc approach. It's systemic, and we need to find a way to exercise it from the system. All right? So I think we have to perhaps give more attention. But to say that maybe the president should have waited, maybe, but at the same time, setting up this committee, and I think the issues raised by my good friend Brahma are all legitimate in terms of the composition, the fact that it's ad hoc, some may be appointed to other positions and all. Well, maybe that will give the president a new thinking on this, that maybe I should be looking at a more institutionalized way to approach this. If the existing institutions are not strong enough, maybe we have to find a way to empower them to be able to undertake this kind of mandate. So I think there are certain alternatives to that, you know. So, I mean, I think the way this was constituted and the idea that maybe they have to come public so people will know what they are doing. Come on, when you are doing investigation, you don't put all your cards in the public domain. I'm surprised my good friend is saying that it's good to publicize it. After all, it's not a legal institution. And what you are doing, there's no confirmation. So it's important to do your work discreetly and periodically inform the public where you have been, how many people have been caught in this trap, or how you're going to submit this to the appropriate body. That, for me, is a better approach to their work than not to turn it into a concert party where any small catch you announce. Well, maybe that's what they think they should do. But for me, since evidence may not be conclusive, it's important to cross the T's and dot the I's and do all those things. So once you come out to say Mr. Asumasi Bafwa Jemendria has been found to have taken a state property, I will have no reason to deny it. Of course, I can challenge it in the court, but I will fail. So I think that is the way we should do. But more importantly, I think the idea of finding a more permanent way of dealing with it, including the proposal by Mr. Blakwa to pass a legislation as soon as possible to stop this kind of thing going on again. For me, these are the ways we should be looking as we move forward.
Right. Okay, well, if you just joined us, we're talking to Professor Bafwa Agyeman-Duah. That's the person you just heard. We also have Suleiman Abrahima on the line, and we're talking about oral. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a couple of questions on my mind. The first one is this. Should we really be approaching this through committee and commission approach? Bearing in mind that when evidence is presented in this country before a committee or commission, that evidence can then not be used to prosecute those involved. Secondly, the president has issued a directive to the Lands Commission to halt the sale and processing of state and public lands. What that means is that up until this directive was issued, sale and processing of state and public lands was legal, which is why Okudzeto Ablakwa is seeking to pass a private member's bill to stop it. So if it is legal, then how do we retrieve or recover sold state lands? These are just two of the questions on our mind. Stay with us. We'll ask our panel when we use of the committee and commission approach in investigation. It is generally understood that the evidence that is presented to committees and commissions, unless I'm mistaken, cannot then be used for prosecution. Should the president bear that in mind, or is this actually the better way to go about recovering this route?
Well, I don't want to think that the president was not advised and he did it through his before the start. Mind you, the president is not a new hand. He's been in power before. He's been in government for a very long time. He's a great thinker. He knows all these things. So maybe there must be a special reason leading to the setting up of this committee. And I know all the issues we have raised. I believe strongly the president knows them. Don't underestimate the knowledge and the intelligence of the president at all. So he knows it. So there must be for a specific reason. And I think it's a great move. And I have to say that we solidly support any effort to retrieve stolen state assets. That's the matter. The issue here we are discussing is the approach. Because we want it to be such that once it's done, all those found guilty will face the law. I know the way our legal system works in this country. And my good friend, Martin Pebu himself, is a great lawyer. He knows, as I said earlier, he will be the first to rush to the defense of anyone who may be seen to be unjustifiably accused and tried and that kind of stuff. That's why, first of all, if the president had done this as part of an early signal to be more serious with corruption than his predecessor, then now that he's formally in office, he must find a way. And now he has legal counsel, he has lawyers around him. Let us find a way to make this a solid approach, a solid project. And that's why, number one, the idea mooted by Mr. Okudato, Ablakwa, it's important one. That's the first thing. Then we have to also decide, because what has been happening is legal, quote and unquote. By the way, when I saw the copy of the deed or something given to the NIB guy who's denying and all that, it starts with the president of Ghana who is signing off this property to that gentleman. And I was surprised. I didn't know there can be a direct contract between the president of a republic and a citizen, an ordinary citizen. I hope you know what I'm talking about. If you look at the document, you see, it again reflects the extensive and needless powers we have invested in our presidents. That something like a land to be transferred or sold has to emanate from the president. So in fact, as we are talking about possibility of constitutional reviews and looking at the powers of the president, it could be one of the interesting things we look at. Okay? So I guess I am only saying that for us to have a more sustainable legal approach to stopping this canker in our society, we should find first the legal way and strict, strong enforcement of whatever law that we pass. Look, this matter that we are dealing, by the way, we are just thinking of politicians or appointed people. The whole category of people sit on the stage. Don't you and I know that in some institutions, state institutions, including educational institutions, when the head knows he's going to retire next year or so, they go in for a brand new Mercedes or brand new whatever car, garage it, and when the time comes, he pays a pittance for it. It's been going on for years. So if we are serious, let's stop these hypocrisy as if we don't know what's going on. Let's be serious in attacking it. And I think President Mahama, fortunately, has what it takes to do it. Look, even the private members bill Mr. Ablakwa is talking about, maybe not necessary, because today the president has overwhelming representation, his party in parliament. So even if the opposition doesn't want it, we can pass it because we know it is in the best interest of the nation. So this president is uniquely placed to initiate certain reforms that we, all of us, need to sanitize the system that has been corrupt for so many years in this country. That is, I think, for me, the best approach.
Sulemana, because Prof mentioned the private members bill Kujetua Blackwell is proposing, I mean, it makes sense for me to ask this. If Mr. Kujetua Blackwell is proposing a bill to outlaw the sale of state lands to state, to government officials, that presupposes that it is not currently against the law to do so. So, if it's not against the law, then how are we going to go about recovering land that has been sold to state officials?
Well, for me, I'll leave it to the lawyers. It's a very interesting legal matter which I am not qualified to address. But I would love to see how it pans out. Because technically, everything that has been done that we find wrong, most of them have been done legally, because that's what the law permits. Permits a certain precedent to reward people of their choice. And it's been going on, as I keep saying. No, it wasn't only Akufo-Addo who did that. I believe under NDC, previous NDC regimes, it happened. Nobody can deny that. It happened. Then maybe the level could be different. Maybe on a lower level, and maybe on the Akufo-Addo, a higher level. But whether lower or higher is the same problem. So, look, when we are looking at national issues, please, we do not deal with national issues on personalities. We do not deal with national issues on political party basis. It's the nation we are talking about. So when we are looking for new laws, we are looking at a law that cuts across. Okay? That is how you build a country. That's how you consolidate a democracy. So there should be no partisanship here. That's why I'm also saying that if Akufo-Addo has committed a crime by giving these state properties away to his cronies, the same thing happened under former President Kufuor. It happened under Rawlings. It happened under Mahama the first time. So let's look at it holistically and find a solution. Because if you don't stop it, once a president like Mahama may not indulge in that, somebody after Mahama can go back and do the same. So let's look for a permanent solution, something that really sanitizes the system.
Suleiman, I'd like to hear you on the same question.
Well, I think that the starting point for me is to say that it's not everything legal that is right. And it's not everything legal that is ethical and moral. And in fact, I doubt that in human life, we can legislate everything, every aspect of our lives. There must be a law codifying how you behave or otherwise. Sometimes we are also guided by our conscience, by our values, and by our ethics. And I think that is why President Mahama has a responsibility and an opportunity to set a different standard. He talks about wanting to make a legacy. And of course, I doubt that in this our country, in the next maybe century, someone else will get the opportunity and the privilege that President Mahama has gotten in terms of seeing it all in our governance from the district level to a member of parliament, deputy minister, vice president, president, going out for 8 years and coming back as president. I think it represents a golden opportunity, a unique blessing for him to do something that would let the nation and perhaps even the continent remember him forever, as we do remember our founding fathers, Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah, and the rest. And so President Mahama has a responsibility to set a certain personal standard to guide his actions and future actions going forward. That is number one. Number two, talking about law. Because I don't think that the corruption that is happening, and that has always been happening, has been happening because there is no law against corruption. It is happening because people would find ways to circumvent whatever laws that you make, whether it is procurement. Look at procurement. I believe that at some point, the whole argument was that it is because we don't have procurement laws, it is because we don't have an entity that would oversee public procurement. That is why there is corruption. So Public Procurement Authority was set up, the law was passed, and what has happened? What has changed? In fact, things have gotten worse because corruption today, I believe, has been worse than we ever experienced, to the extent that President Akufo-Addo then even appointed a minister in charge of public procurement. And what happened? The worst forms of corruption happened. So, yes, the idea of having a private member's bill or even a state-sponsored bill to prevent the acquisition of state assets by persons in government is a good thing. But the point is that without the personal commitment, without the moral guidance and the ethical guidance, there would always be ways of circumventing these laws. We may have the law, and persons will say that people would say, oh, well, the president has an override. The president can, if the president signs it off, then, the law doesn't take effect. So for me, laws are good, but at the end of the day, it's about how we as individuals want to behave. Now, talking about Aura, whether it should have been set up at the time it was set up or not, Kojo, some of us are privy to very, very scandalous last-minute actions that were being taken, deals and so on that were being made last minute. And even though I can't say this for a fact, I suspect that the setup of Aura at that point was basically to maybe see if a certain signal can be sent out there to say, hey, we are watching. If these last-minute things about acquiring state assets, looting from the public, and so on and so forth is not stopped, you could get yourself into trouble. And you go to places like Ministry of Roads and last-minute contracts that were being signed. You have somebody who is acting chief director of the ministry, director general of the Ghana Road Fund, Ghana Roads Commission, director general of urban roads, one person. And so you have a situation where perhaps the same person writes from urban roads, addressed to chief director, Ministry of Roads, and goes back there to be the same person to approve whatever he has signed. Requests that were being made for payment of compensation to persons affected by road constructions, and these were roads that have not been done, including a road that I use quite often, the Reese Junction to School Junction Road. Nothing has happened here, and yet there was a request for payment for victims of the road construction. So a lot of last-minute things were being done, and I suspect that it was basically an attempt to say, hey, can we set up something that may put the fear in people to stop certain actions that are being taken? But like Prof. Ajimendia said, President Mahama has the numbers in Parliament. The good thing about that is that if he wants to do good to this nation, if he wants to really leave a positive legacy, he has all that it takes to be able to do that. The bad side of it is that if he wants to do bad, he has the numbers to do the kinds of things that may not be beneficial to this country. And finally, Kojo, I think that at this point, the time for Aura is up. That we have a president. He's no longer a president-elect. We have state institutions. If the president thinks that none of the state institutions can perform the function of investigating, gathering the necessary information, and putting that before the appropriate authorities for either prosecutions, recoveries, and whatever, then the president has the power to set up whatever committee or commission or group that he wants to set up for that investigation and fund the group with public resources. With Aura, I doubt how it was going to be funded if it is not maybe from the president's own whatever or NDC's own resources. But this time, the state has the capacity to set up a group if the president thinks that none of the groups, IOCO, Financial Intelligence, NIB, the Police CID, if the president doesn't have the faith in these ones to be able to, or the Auditor General, to be able to, investigate other information, even with maybe lawyers that can help to package the things and thoroughly investigate to be able to present cases to the Attorney General for prosecution. And in fact, it includes the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Okay.
So
Now,
if all these
Sule,
cannot do it, then of
sorry,
course,
Sule, if you can hear
yes.
me, yes, because you are on what should be happening going forward. I just want to chip in what we've heard, or it's been reported that the lady Joyce Bar Mokhtari has been saying. She insists that oral ends when the Attorney General is in place. We know that this Attorney General and Minister of Justice will be vetted today. Is that a feasible way forward?
Maybe I didn't get your question.
My question is, we have been told that oral ends when the Attorney General is actually in place. This Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, will be vetted today. I'm asking whether that's a feasible way forward. But if Prof is with us, I want us to touch briefly on some other happenings in the governance space. The first is that the presidency issued a statement cutting down the number of ministries from 30 to 23. This is pursuant to the 60 ministers thinking that he put forward ahead of election. Is that a step in the right direction? Well, I understand, Suleiman, you're back on.
But Prof is answering the question.
Okay, yeah, okay, yes, Prof.
About the ministers?
Yes, about the ministers more specifically.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think for me it's a very good sign from the president seeking to fulfill promises that he made. Specifically on the appointment of ministers, he told the nation we will have not more than 60. So going forward to use executive instrument to already reduce what is statutory from 30 to 23, it's a first big step. So I think there are certain ministries that were really superfluous. For instance, why do you have a Ministry of Sanitation? Because, again, I'm hoping that by so doing, the president is also thinking seriously about this whole notion of empowering the districts to take over certain roles that are loaded here in Accra on ministries. Because our district assemblies have been more or less weak in so many ways. So I think that's the first step. But back to your question, it's good that some have been merged, consolidated and all. And our also troubling is whether is what the Constitution designates as regional ministers. That tends to overload the appointment of ministers, but certainly people who are placed in the regions to represent the president, they don't have ministerial portfolio. So maybe if it's not an entrenched clause in the Constitution, this be one area that the president quickly can use his power in the parliament to see if they can drop that designation. Just let them be also regional chief executives. You see? So if we do that, then I think the president will really succeed in getting to the number that he wants. Some people have been saying it may not be enough to cover certain things. I keep saying, look, if you have to follow the problem of this country, you may have to appoint 1,000 ministers because that's how many problems we have. But I think in his wisdom, and I like that, he's consolidating, and I think that's going to work for him. So I'm very pleased with this initial step to try to stay within the promise that he gave the people.
I'll give the last word on that to you, Suleimana.
Yes, Raymond, because my line dropped, I actually did not get the question that Prof was responding to.
Yes, I was talking about the drop in the number of ministers from 30 to 23. Is that a step in the right direction? You know, the man says he wants to appoint 60 ministers.
Yes, so I think it's a drop in the number of ministries and not ministers from 30 to 23. So 7 of them scrapped or merged. Of course, it's a step in the right direction. The indication of appointment of 60 ministers, what I'm not too sure about is whether those include the 16 regional ministers that, we've always had. So if you have 60, if he's going to continue with that tradition, then we have 16 regional ministers, and then you are left with about 44 ministers and deputy ministers. I think that there are some still that could have been taken away. For example, fisheries, aquaculture. I'm not too sure why that cannot come under agric, for example. Another one is environment and science and I think innovation or technology. We have Ministry of Communications, Digitalization and Innovation or Technology. And then we have Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. So if you're talking about environment, why wouldn't the environment fit perfectly within the Natural Resources Ministry? I think that it could still even come down. Of course, that gives a lot of put a lot of burden on the president in terms of the people who have to be satisfied. But if he wants to make a legacy, he wants to have a legacy, as he's always said, it's not really about pleasing people. It's about getting the work done, minimizing costs, ensuring value for money, and doing away with all this corruption canker that we've always talked about. At the end of the day, if the state is doing well, if the country is doing well, I'm sure everyone would have a benefit from that.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a direction, but it could even come down further.
Gentlemen, we are grateful to you for your time this morning. Professor Bafo Ajimendia is a former UN governance advisor. And we also had Suleiman Abrahima, you just heard him, Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa.